Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Missouri Invasive Plant Council webinar, which is hosted by the Missouri Prairie Foundation. And the title of the presentation is EDDMapS, an invasive species mapping system for everyone. My name is Carol David. I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Prairie Foundation, and I'm Chair of the Missouri Invasive Plant Council, also known as MOIP. MOIP is a multi-agency, multidisciplinary networking and advocacy group that is administered by the Missouri Prairie Foundation, and MOIP's overarching goal is to make early detection and control of invasive plants a higher statewide priority in all public and private sectors. We have many free resources at moinvasives.org about invasive species and methods of control. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to all of you tomorrow. You can revisit it also at any time in the future at the Missouri Prairie Foundation's YouTube channel. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please write them in the Q&A section. You should see a button at the bottom of your screen, and our presenter will address them throughout the webinar. And now I'd like to welcome our presenter, and we're so grateful that she could share her time and her knowledge with us today. Rebekah Wallace is EDDMapS Coordinator and Bugwood Images Coordinator for the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health at the University of Georgia. She's been working with the EDDMapS platform since 2011 and has helped programs throughout the United States and Canada document their invasive species populations and share their data. And with that, Rebekah, please take it away.
All right, so thank you all for allowing me to talk about our program. So I will say I'm going to be talking about our website for a little while, and then I'm going to be talking about our EDDMapS app and then our EDDMapS Pro app. Those are kind of the three big things that I believe that will be the most useful of our kind of overall larger platform tools. With the EDDMapS website, I'm not going to go over every single thing with the website or with the two apps. Each of those, tools, platforms, whatever you want to call them, can be a whole big, long presentation in and of itself. So I'm just going to kind of say, hey, here are the various features. Here's where you can find them. And a lot of our different tools have walkthroughs and PowerPoints, PDFs, and training videos on our training page here up in the training bar. And then if your particular group is interested in a smaller training session, so if your park, if your forest, if something like that, your group of people, whatever that group is interested in a specific training session, I'm more than happy to do that. And I've actually also already been talking with my hosts about a specific type of training session as well. So that talk's already in the works, but if you want something for your specific group to train your specific people on one of our tools, I'm more than happy to do that as well. And I'll be monitoring the Q&A box. If I'll try to weave in some of these answers as I'm going through. If they're kind of a general audience kind of question, I'll try to do that as I'm going through. If it's a very, very specific question to your situation, I might leave that towards the end. So just, you can put stuff in as I'm talking, and I'll try to keep an eye on that so that I can, kind of answer as we go along as it's relevant to that specific section that I get to. So with the EDDMapS website on the home page, we've got the bar at the top. It's a very popular feature nowadays with websites, having a bar at the top. You can report individual sightings through the website, so you can report one observation at a time. It's a very comprehensive form. It's not going to have everything that everybody wants, because that would be intimidating for the average person. The only required fields, and this is true for the website, this is true for the apps, the subject that you saw, and that can be insect, disease, wildlife, or plant, you have to be logged in. We have to have some sort of a account to resolve a record to, in case the group doing the verifications have questions or if more information is needed. A date, and then a location, and that can be a state and county if you're on the website, or in the apps or on the website, down to a point or polygon. We have lots of different types of maps. I'll show you some of those real quick, just to give you an idea of what they are. And I'm going to pick leafy spurge is a good one. So we have our state map, and in the top right, species reported is green. So at least one record in each of these states or provinces. If we go to counties, imagine this. This is the counties things are reported in. But you'll also see that with the county, we added subject reported, and then subject reported from child taxa. What that means is if I was looking at Lonicera, so the invasive honeysuckles, you have Maro's honeysuckle, Amur honeysuckle, Japanese honeysuckle, Bell's honeysuckle. There's lots and lots of types of honeysuckles. Some of them are hard to tell apart. They hybridize in some cases. They are hybrids in some cases. So we do have Lonicera spa. We do have Ligustrum spa. So where we have those, the subject that you're on, in this case, we're on, I'll open up another one so you can see a difference. So we'll do Ligustrum. So the subject in this case is the genus Ligustrum, and you'll see there's two different colors of green here. The dark green is at least one of that exact subject. Ligustrum spa has been reported. Whereas with the lighter color green, that means only the subject, only the child taxa of that subject has been reported. So in these majority of the Indiana counties, we don't have a Ligustrum spa reported, but we've got a Japanese, Chinese, European, border privet, something in the Ligustrum genus has been reported, but not something at the Ligustrum genus has been reported. So that's a change that happened either early this year or late last year. So if you haven't checked out the maps since then, that's what this means. And so going back to leafy spurge, under counties, we've got a lot of button options. If I go up to privet, we only have the three. We have record density, how many records have been reported in a county, and literature versus observation, which is, does the data in that county come from literature, which includes herbariums, museums, journal articles, checklists, things like that, or does it come from actual observations from observational databases, from being reported directly to EDDMapS, being reported in an observational database, or other observational situation like, say, iNaturalist. But certain species, including in this case leafy spurge, have up to 4 additional buttons: future range, future certainty, future abundance habitat, and inhabit. Inhabit takes you to a USGS website, but the future range, future certainty, and future abundance habitat are all modeling data we got from other programs where they're trying to see where species will be in the future. So I'm not going to give a thorough walkthrough on these, but we do have this little info button at the top right of the maps to tell you all about these particular maps. So in this case, it's looking at, you can set the number of models, and that just also takes you to the info button. So this particular project had up to 13 models looking at where these species are, And what you're setting here is the number of models you want to agree on where this species will be. So with 1, it looks like, oh my God, leafy spurge is just going to take over the entire country. But if you set it to 13 models having to agree, it's like, oh, no, 13 models only say it's going to be in like 4 counties. That they can only agree on those 4 counties absolutely, according to the model parameters, having leafy spurge in the future, in this case, in the years 2040 to 2060. So you can play around with that. These are supposed to help you identify where these species are going to be in the future to help make priority lists and figure out, do we need to worry about this thing that is either in our area or theoretically knocking on our door? So future range looks at current EDDMapS data. Future certainty doesn't look at the data. It's just saying, where do these models agree or disagree? So it's not looking at live data for that expansion or contraction. And then future abundance habitat, again, you can look at that and look at that info button and get more information about that. You are going to see that there's going to be a difference in the data between point and county maps. So we, as I mentioned, you can report county level data. We get county level data. It's not uncommon. And when you're reporting data, you can also say, I want the coordinates private from the public. That means that the point level data is almost always going to be less than the county level data. You're going to have some counties lighting up that won't have point data. It's just how that works. We do not artificially put in county centroids or anything like that just to have a representation on this point map. You can turn on and off points. So if you just want to look at a map with treated and positive data, so theoretically it's still there, you can play around with that. We also have lists. It's just literally a list of records, and our species info page, which you can also get to at the top here. So those are the main maps we have that you can play around with. And then on our home page, if I scroll down a little bit, you have this tool box right here, and that toolbox is also going to be on this tools page. Gives you a little bit of information about different features on the website. And if you open up some of these, there'll be various tools within them. So from here, you can report sightings. You can see the 2 apps I'm going to be briefly talking about, and you can download them from here onto your device. Data upload. So I mentioned uploading data via our website or apps, but we do have file uploaders. So if your project, program, forest, park, whatever, has historical data, or you're taking data in your own databases, you can contribute that data to EDDMapS through this data upload. Easily upload multiple data files, exactly what it is. Another feature is the EDDMapS query. So if I click on that, and again, you can get to that from the tools page. This is our new advanced query tool. We skinned it, reformatted it. It's definitely different than what it used to look like. And we have this walkthrough right here so that you can see how to interact with this tool to use it to your, to get the result you want as close as possible. So we had a question, what format of data files to upload? For the bulk uploader, we do accept Excel, CSV, and GIS type files. So geo packages, geodatabases, and shape files. And there is on the, if I go back, I'll just open that up real quick. If we go to the data upload, there's also a bulk upload procedure. And there's also a bulk data entry templates and data dictionary so that you can see what our fields are, what the field data types are, and so on and so forth. And then you can just upload data. It's going to ask you some questions. so that I can interpret the data as best as possible. It's not an automated thing where you upload the data and it's automatically in. I do the formatting of the data and making sure that, you know, quality assurance, quality control type stuff. So with this advanced query tool, so the data comes in to EDDMapS, it's reviewed by someone. And I'm not talking about what I do with the formatting, it's reviewed for accuracy by EDDMapS verifiers. And then they will, if it's correct, they'll release it to the public. That is where the data then will show up on the maps and in these types of downloads. So again, this walkthrough will help you interact with the tool so that you can get the result as close as possible. Now, our programmer, to have this be a live responsive tool, so previously you'd build your query and then hit submit and you'd get your result. The tool always wants there to be at least one record as a result. So to have that, our programmer said, well, we have to have a default query built in. So the default query is the last month of data for positive and treated records. So that's the default query. But again, this tool has a walkthrough so that you know what all these different fields mean. If you open them, you get a little piece of information as well. So what your options are, what, you know, how to interact with them, whatnot. But your only options as you're building your query are things that will result in at least one record. So that means if I, let's exclude Canada, and this is again just for the last month of data. And you see now the maps changed a little bit. If I tap or click search, and let's see, we are going to be missing some states here because we don't have records from every single state. So you see Wyoming is missing, West Virginia is missing, Tennessee is missing. So that means in the last month, we have not gotten any data reviewed for those specific states. So if your result isn't showing up, that means that your parameters are such that that would result in 0 records. Once you have your once you have your query built, you have a couple different options. So I'm just going to I'm going to say aquatic plants, and I'm going to say for I'm going to clear out just to show you what this is going to look like. Apologies. So you see, this is a result of over 200,000 records. It would basically clog our data request. So you would have to request me for over that. What I always recommend is you can always do more than one request. So you can break out your requests into multiple requests. So you can say, okay, for smaller geographic areas, smaller pieces of time or whatever. But I'm going to make my request to something a little more realistic and say, for one county in Georgia, I want all of the positive and treated aquatic plants for their current status. That means that current status records with the most recent observation date. We also have original records, the first record in a series. If you're only interested in revisits, we also have, you can request only revisit records. Because with EDDMapS, you can do repeated observations at a pop of a species at a location over time. So you can say, I'm treating this population And in 2020, I found it and treated it. 2021, it went from, 10 acres to 2 acres. In 22, it's down to 1 acre, and so on and so forth. So instead of having points stacked on top of points, you just have one record with a history to it, so to speak. At least one that will just show up on a map at a time. Or we can say all. So if I switch this to all, we added one more record. So there was a revisit to an original record. So I can then do a couple different things. I can save this query. And if I save this query, I can run, it's like creating a recipe and then making it over and over and over through time. So saving this query means that I can run it quarterly, annually, every 5 years, whatever, and I don't have to build it every single time. So if you were trying to give a status report of what's going on in your county for aquatic plants, or if you're doing something like that where you're trying to show something repeatedly to someone for some sort of report, you can build the query once. It'll save it to your My EDDMapS under saved queries, and you can just run it over and over as needed and get live current results. Saving a query also means that this data set is available to you in EDDMapS Pro so that you can interact with that data in EDDMapS Pro. And I'm specifying Pro because that is not a feature on the regular EDDMapS app. In the top right here, you can screenshot the map. You can actually share this. So if you have a website where you're trying to say, hey, this is our SISMA's data, you can have that data set and share this live version of the map on your website at any point. Or you can download a CSV, a KML, or a shapefile. And I saw I had a question about the output for a shapefile being a .gpkg. And GPKG is a geopackage, which is an open source format for a geodatabase. So you can treat it as a geodatabase and open it in ArcGIS, QGIS, things like that. So that's what a GPKG is. It also allowed us to compress that file more than the geodatabases were able to be compressed. So it makes a much smaller file. And then can we use this program to identify areas we want to eradicate? People are using the EDDMapS data in a variety of ways to help set priorities, identify areas that to them locally are able to be treated and potentially eradicated. One of the things you might be interested in, not you specifically, but you as a group might be interested in is on the EDDMapS homepage, and then also under My EDDMapS, if we go down here, there's the concept of alerts. So you can click here to sign up for alerts, or if we go to My EDDMapS, and then on the left bar here, there's alerts. Here's where my saved queries are, and there's a lot more stuff I'll go through, but I'll show you what alerts are real quick. Alerts are where you set up in this geographic location. I am interested in plants, insects, diseases, or maybe I'm interested in a subcategory of something like that, like aquatic plants. I'm interested in, all the, birds, mammals. I'm interested in vines. I'm interested in, different types of categories or very specific species. Maybe I'm interested in only the first time it would be verified in that county or state for that particular species. It has to be a species. And you can create that alert. So I currently have alerts for if a verifier reviews a record and releases it as unlisted or unknown, because that is not the appropriate map those should be showing on. We don't want to have a bunch of unknown plants as a map. We want those to go to the proper species, or maybe it's a genus like I was talking about before. So you can set alerts to be notified of new records coming in to help you keep on top of things like new populations of species or expanding populations of species, or just new reports of priority species. Another place you can look at, and then I had a question, where was that query page I was on? So if I go back to again, the home page and the tools page both have this box, and that query is right here. So it'll be EDDMapS query. And that's where that query tool is that I was showing you earlier. And then one other thing that can help you identify species or subjects, again, maybe not at the species level, but we have this species locator. Again, that I got to that from the home page. You can also get to this from the tools page. And you can see records by congressional district, lists of species by state and by county, and then species distribution by other geographic locations. And these other geographic locations are also a field on that EDDMapS query. So I can say, let's see what Missouri has. Missouri, and I'm just going to pick a forest. It's a big forest. Let's expand this out a little bit. Let me find something that says forest. Forest access. Here's a conservation area. And this may show up with no data. It's entirely possible. So it looks like, yeah, we have no data. But it'll show you, see if there's anything within 50 miles. It'll show you records that are within or close to, depending on your buffer distance, of these particular areas you might be interested in. Other geographic locations is kind of the compromise of sometimes they're forests, sometimes they're parks, sometimes they're conservation areas, sometimes they're like grass feeding lots, sometimes they're water bodies. There was a lot of different types of boundaries we were able to get, and I asked it for a little too much there. So I will actually look at Florida, and we will look in Miami, and we're gonna get something big here in the Everglades. Everglades, unfortunately, has a lot of invasives. So these are the points in the Everglades National Park in Miami-Dade County. And then if we scroll down further, you can see CSV, Excel, PDF, or print. You can print or save this list. So you can take this list somewhere and say, oh my God, what is going on in Everglades that they've got over 2,000 reports of just the Burmese python? That's not the other invasive, the other invasive snakes that they've got going on down there. And so again, you can turn the points on and off. You can screenshot the map and save it, put it in a presentation, whatever you want. And again, these are also going to be in the EDDMapS query at the, I think it's on the advanced page. So it's on the advanced page, other geographic locations. Oh, and it wants you to select at least a state first so that I'm trying to, so that the list will actually populate for other geographic locations. So, yeah, so in the Everglades SISMA in Miami-Dade County, they've had 7 reports in the last month, and you can actually scroll in, even click on these, and it'll tell, okay, a brown basilisk, it's a snake. Not snake, sorry, it's a lizard. Great iguana, that's another lizard. So they have a lot going on there, unfortunately. So if we changed this, and you can, and I see a question, do you have state parks, state historic sites? Probably for Missouri. I recommend things you're interested in, go and see if we have it. If we don't, we may need your help to find that shape, so that we can populate the shapes we don't have for these other geographic locations. So I want to go ahead and pivot now to the My EDDMapS page, because this will help you build your EDDMapS Pro if that's where you're going to be going. EDDMapS Pro, as it sounds like, it's a professional oriented smartphone application. You can also use it on a tablet, of course, as long as you have GPS on your tablet. So in My EDDMapS, we have dashboards where you can see your dashboard, your verifier dashboard, and the EDDMapS dashboard. I recommend you, play around with those and then see if there's something interesting there that you can use. The EDDMapS dashboard, you can actually export as PowerPoint slides. So it's kind of similar to that advanced query tool with fewer parameters, but more graphic outputs besides just a map. If you're going to be using EDDMapS Pro, we have these EDDMapS Pro tools down here. And then we also have where you can interact with your saved queries. And EDDMapS Pro requires you to create a species list. EDDMapS Pro doesn't automatically populate a species list. So you'll have to create your species list. We do have some existing species lists, including Missouri SRISP species list. So if you want to pre-populate with those species lists or create your own individual species list, you can see I've got one for myself here. And this is what populates EDDMapS Pro, and those are the species you can report. Sorry, I'm reading a question. So they're asking about adding how a person would enter data on a population of an invasive plant. I'm guessing that's asking about adding like abundance information. So in infested area, gross area, density, those are all fields we have on the reporting forms on the website and on the app. So I'll show you that in just a minute. So there's another feature here called projects. I don't have enough time to get into projects, but projects are really useful for uniting data that it would be difficult to query otherwise. So if you're running let's say a awareness campaign, a reporting campaign, or if you have part of like a grant project, that's where you can create a project, have people report into the project, and so all of that data belongs together, because you can't necessarily just look at data coming into a county and say, yes, all of this data belongs to this project. Projects also have their own dashboards. So I recommend you look on our training page at the projects walkthrough to see how those work and kind of what that looks like. In the EDDMapS Pro Tools, you'll see here we've got my county list. I mentioned before about saved queries and interacting with the data on EDDMapS Pro. You also want to pick a county list because you can download all the data for that county, but you can also download background maps. So if you're in an area with poor cell service and you can't get background maps from Google showing up on the reporting page, you can still have something. So we do have those background maps you can download. You can upload project areas. So what that looks like is this is a shape on a map. Right now, these shapes don't interact with the data. They just show up on the map, but that allows you to see that shape and you can say, okay, visually speaking, these points are within, not within, this is the shape I'm working in today, this is the shape I need to stay out of today, things like that. So these shapes you can also share with people. So you can upload them. You can upload a KML. You can draw the shape on the map. And like I said, you can share them. So right now I'm just gonna sorry, apologies. So this is the EDDMapS app. This app is a lot easier to just kind of download and go and just automatically start kind of reporting. When you download the app, it's going to ask you to log in or create an account. It's also going to ask you for your location. The reason it asks you for your state is that we are pre-populating a list of species that you can see the species information for and that are reportable and usually high priority for that particular state. So the species information is that bottom section there, so I can look at the plants, the insects, so forth, and see what images and text information we have on them. At the top, these are for reporting a observation, creating a negative survey. So I looked in this area and did not find, say you were doing a survey for 5 different species, you can draw out that area and say, I did not find those 5 different species. And then your upload queue is where your records sit until you're ready to submit them to the database. Again, if you're in a poor service area, these records sit on your phone until you're ready to upload them. So you're not using battery and data when you don't need to be. In the top left, we have our menu. There it goes. So your My Species list, that again, that's that list I created on the website, but you can also add species from the species info pages. You can star or add them to your list. You can also access your queue. You can access your profile, change your state or province. So if you're going to spend some time in Miami hunting for basilisks and Burmese pythons, you can change that so that they're reportable for you. Settings, feedback if you're having issues with the app and our about section. So if I tap on new sighting, I can, this is a much smaller form than is on the website, but once I pick a species, the form gets a little bit bigger. As you can see, I can add more plants. So if I'm looking at an abandoned lot with 15 different species that I want to report, I can just keep adding more plants, and you can only do this for plants. And then I can add images. Everything, if I'm doing this for plants, every piece of information is going to be replicated across those different records. So if I add 5 species and then I click save, all of the information I added to this form is going to be replicated across 5 records in my upload queue. I can then go into my upload queue and adjust things as I need to for things like area, density, images, things like that. But this allows you to, kind of more quickly create records where you've got a lot going on. So we can add images. If we tap the observation date, that's going to change that observation date. I can tap on the little map icon and I can drop a point, move the point around, or I can drop a freeform or vertices polygon. So freeform is I just drag my finger, and then vertices is I can tap points. And if I say done, it automatically populated that area field. Then I can save. It's going to say, oh, do you want to include a photo? I'm going to say no. And that's now in my upload queue to upload at a later date. This is the majority of the EDDMapS app itself. The EDDMapS Pro app, as I said, has a lot more to it. And a little bit less in some cases. So in this case, zoom back out because I want to show you those. Here they are. So it zoomed in on my location, but that's not where I have these project areas. So the EDDMapS app automatically opens up onto a map of where you currently are. It doesn't open up to that menu page like the EDDMapS app does. This is the EDDMapS Pro app. I'm sorry, I might mix them up again, but I'm showing you EDDMapS Pro right now. So to add a new record, in the bottom right is this little green icon with a plus sign. I can start by walking a polygon, and you can also drive if you're in the passenger seat of a vehicle. Do not walk a polygon if you're in the driver's seat, if at all possible. But you can walk a polygon. You can be in a like a four-wheeler or like a little gator or something, and you can drive or walk the perimeter of a polygon to create that polygon. You can use your current location. You can draw a polygon like I showed you on the EDDMapS app. You can drop a marker, or you can start by taking a photo. Those are the 5 different ways that you can start a record. So we're just going to start by using my current location. And again, this is that same list I showed you on the My EDDMapS My Species List page. These are the only records that I can currently report. And I'm going to start by showing you, let's do Japanese beetle so that you can see what an insect form looks like. At the top, we have the species I selected. We also have project. So I mentioned projects earlier. So these are all the projects that I am a part of that I can report a Japanese beetle into. So if you created that if you created that project and you created a species list with it, you can say only these 5, 10, 20, 30, whatever species are reportable in my project. That means that you don't get things reported into your project you don't want. There are three ways to get records into a project, really. The EDDMapS Pro app, bulk data, because we ask you what project this data is going into, or you can move data in the EDDMapS website from one project to another, as long as that project accepts that species. So it's gonna, again, ask for my images. That private field, it's private, it's maybe also called hide exact location. That's that I don't want the public to know where this record is. So that's my point. Time spent. So if you are working with volunteers, or again, trying to document grant hours, that's really useful for the number of minutes you spent on this particular record. And you can add that all up and get an idea of, our volunteers spent 50 hours working on monitoring for this species. Infestation status, positive, I saw it. Treated, I saw it and it did some sort of management activity. Negative, I looked for and did not find Japanese beetle. With insects and diseases, there are different options for this infestation information. So I can say what type of host I saw it on, I can say what type of damage is being done, and so on and so forth. And then in the EDDMapS Pro app, in addition to the normal notes field, we also have a treatment comments field specifically for talking about if there was a treatment conducted and what was going on there. So Missouri has classified 142 plants as invasive. Are these ones that are selected in that list that you said could only be entered in a state? So I don't know all of the lists, all of the species we have for Minnesota. If there are species you want added as reportable in Minnesota, just let me know. Because I, off the top of my head, don't know every species that's reportable in Minnesota. I do believe that for certain ones of these are required. So let me see. Must only be on plants that certain invasive abundance fields are required. Once you've added a record into your upload queue, you'll see that there's a little point added there. So that little white point is, if we tap on the question mark, it's a new mapping in queue. So that little question mark at the top, if you're in different menus, will tell you a little bit of information about that menu or about that page you're currently on. So that question mark can be really helpful. To add data to the map, as I mentioned before, you can add data to the map to interact with it. If you tap on that menu in the top left, if you tap on the menu in the top left, you can select your data set for your counties you selected. You can look at your saved query sets. And then there's also things like monitoring zones, offline maps, and so forth. I really recommend you go through the walkthrough on the training page on EDDMapS, the training page on the EDDMapS website, because there's way more information than I can provide in just the few minutes I can talk about this specific tool. So if I go to my saved query sets, it'll see these are all the saved queries I've made. And the download button means it's not currently on my phone. If it has a little refresh button, it's on my phone, but it's probably old. So I should refresh that. So if I do that, it's refreshing that particular data set, because when you download it to your phone, that's a static version so that you can interact with it when you don't have any signal. So if I go back to my invasives map, you'll see that I've got that little purple, and I've got a white and a gray, and I can interact with these and see. So in this case, Chinese privet was reported in Fullwood Park. I can view the details for that report. I can report a revisit. So remember I talked about in EDDMapS Pro, you can revisit data. So if I view the details, I can say, okay, Karen Rollins reported this in 2012. I can view revisits. There have been no revisits to this record, so I can go back and I can, if I press the little plus sign at the bottom, I can revisit this record. I can say what type of revisit it is, if it's a treatment or a monitoring. I can say the status, so is it eradicated? Is it positive, still there? And so on and so forth. And I can save this as a revisit record, and it'll go into my upload queue to upload when I elect to do that. So I don't understand what makes certain species reportable. The list of species that were selected were ones that were for the EDDMapS app. For the EDDMapS app, when you say I am in Missouri, that list of species was one that was worked out with partners, in some cases a long time ago. In some cases, we've added species since then. Sometimes they came from state's invasive species list. Sometimes they came from working with SISMAs, various other partners. So it's not just a list that, you know, we dreamed up and felt was appropriate for this state or that state. It was from some existing list or partnership. With the My EDDMapS and the My Species list and the species that are reportable in EDDMapS Pro, that's the list you pick. So you can pick the species that are ones that your particular state, county, forest, park are working on, and so on and so forth. So that's where those kinds of lists come from. So once, like I said, and the EDDMapS Pro app has a lot of features, a lot of things to it. If I click on this little gear in the top right, you can change the type of map you're looking at. You can have the map follow you as you're moving around, and you can also filter the records showing up. So if I change this from just those few records in Fullwood Park, and I refresh my Plants of Georgia list, it'll take a minute because I haven't refreshed this one in quite a long time. It's gonna say it's downloading, and if I tap that, that's going back to the map, and I zoom out, and you see there's a lot more plants. I don't necessarily want to see 1,000 plants, so I can open up this gear in the top right, and I can say I want to filter by, let's just say, only positive records, and I want to see only records in the last 18 months. And those are the filters I want to apply. If you're not seeing things you expect to see, that little clear all filters at the bottom is very useful. So in the last 18 months, I must have applied too many filters. Or my query, it's possible my saved query has a date range on it that does not include the last 18 months, because I created that a long time ago. So those are the things you need to be careful with creating saved queries. So if I go back to Fullwood and zoom back in, and there's some of my records. So I could play with those. So I got a question, enter interface to iNaturalist. So we do pull research grade iNaturalist records that are on our list. We don't pull everything from iNaturalist. We may miss some things because our names don't match up, things like that. So we don't automatically throw them in. And I'm going to switch now to going back to, sorry, let me find my Zoom. Stop share. I'm going to switch back to sharing with my computer now so that I can show you what that looks like. So if I go to admin tools, and I'm going to have more things than anybody else will have because I am a system administrator for EDDMapS. If you are a verifier for EDDMapS, if you want to be a verifier for EDDMapS, there's a request to be a verifier link right there above the admin tools, below the alerts. If you are a verifier for EDDMapS, you will have under admin tools, review records, and triage system. If I click triage system, currently this is how we are showing the available iNaturalist records that could go into EDDMapS. So if I limit this to I'm just going to limit. So this is the species that exist on the Georgia Exotic Pest Plant Council list. And my verifier parameters are such that I'm a verifier for the whole US and Canada and everywhere. So I get to see New York and Texas and California and so forth. If you are a verifier for a single county in Minnesota, you will only see that one county data coming from EDDMapS that can be triaged. Apologies. So it will tell you the species, the location, the nativity with regards to the US, the new records that you are allowed to triage based on your parameters for that species in that location, and if those records, the number of records that exist currently in EDDMapS, as additionally if it's on any state list or laws. So let's see if we've got Missouri showing up for species on the Georgia list. I'm sure there will be. All right, so in Missouri, species that also exist on the Georgia Exotic Pest Plant Council list, there are currently 1,362 records for a myrrh honeysuckle that could be triaged. There's 600 plus for euonymus, and so on and so forth. Almost 400 for multiflora rose. There's a bunch of garlic mustard. The thing that I also want to say, in the top right here, we have our triage fact sheet, basically how to interact with the triage system. And then we also have specifically iNaturalist considerations. We are pulling exotic honeysuckles. We are pulling exotic hollies. We are pulling crepe myrtle. We are pulling nandina. We are pulling ligustrums, privets, all that stuff. Things that are still being planted by people. And in iNaturalist, though they do have a button for, yes, I am reporting something that was planted, essentially, captive or cultivated, they have a checkbox for that. Not everybody uses that. So I have found that with iNaturalist data for nandina, we'll pull in, if we pull in 10 records, 8 or 9 of those are going to be planted. So that's why one of the things we have is at the bottom, you can click. So I'm not going to triage anything. Don't worry. So let's say for Queen Anne's lace, that's a better one. Autumn olive. Some people plant autumn olive. I personally would say this needs to go to the verifiers because we want to make sure we're only pulling in escaped autumn olives. We don't necessarily want planted autumn olives because it's not showing a true spread. I would recommend the same for, other things. But if you're looking at something like garlic mustard, there aren't really people planting garlic mustard. It's not as widely a concern for garlic mustard. For garlic mustard, maybe you feel it's very hard to misidentify it. Maybe it's also everywhere. Maybe it's not a high priority species, but you want to fill in locations for garlic mustard. Maybe you review iNaturalist records on iNaturalist for garlic mustard and you know the quality of that data. That's where you can say, okay, I'm going to bulk verify this. That data will go into EDDMapS, bypassing the review process because you are saying, I trust this data. And it will start showing up on maps. It'll start showing up in data downloads. It's not immediate because right now, what you see on this page, what you see on this table, that's all we've pulled. We know that garlic mustard is in some counties in Missouri, and there are this many of it that are waiting. So we need to go and pull the extra information and all the images associated with these records. So it won't be an automatic thing going either into the maps. It won't be an automatic thing the moment you click it going to review it in the verifier reviewing records queue. But we are pulling the iNaturalist records. We're just not automatically throwing them in there. So if you are a verifier, I recommend you go to this triage page. Again, you get to it through my EDDMapS and the admin tools page, and you subscribe to receive emails when we do an iNaturalist pull. We try to pull about once a month. Sometimes it gets a little slower in the winter because not as much is being reported. But we have been pulling the iNaturalist records. I think we started pulling them in maybe 2017 or 2018. Let me look at the tools real quick. I know we're kind of at the end of my time, but we do have where you can look up species lists. We do have where you can see who the report verifier is in the directory. You can interact with our modeling tools on this EDDMapS predictor page. And again, this is on the tools page and it's on the home page further down. But I'm happy to answer any questions about anything else. I think I've gotten most of the questions in the question and answer in the chat box. But if there's any additional questions, I'm happy to hang around and answer any you've got from anybody.
Thank you, Rebekah. I had a question. Is it possible for you to show us all of the records, show us a map of Missouri and all of the records that have been uploaded, verified and uploaded? And can you talk a little bit about why it's important for people to provide data? Why it, should we all just go off and do our own thing and treat invasives, or what more do we gain by uploading these records into EDDMapS? How does it help the overall conservation community?
Yeah. So again, I got to the query page through again, it's the toolbox on the tools page or the home page. There's the EDDMapS query link, and this is where you can say, I want to see everything for Missouri. I don't know if a map will show up, just because if it gets to over 200,000 records, it says no. But we'll see. So but we will see if we can go ahead and any. Okay, so there's at least been some, so that'll help limit, and then we will clear that.
Oh, and I should have specified, I just mean plants.
That will also help. So division is where we can say plants. Come on. And that'll help reduce some things down. And I limited it to, yeah, it's okay, it's over 10,000, which means we cannot save the query. But we have, so in this record summary here, 41,000 locations with records. 15 have exact coordinates. There's 2 million infested acres and so on and so forth. So if we zoom in up, I'll have to look into that. Something's out of whack there, Victor. So that Texas record, there's something going on with it. Either the coordinates are wrong or it was misapplied. Something was misapplied somewhere. So let's just zoom in here. So these are all the plant records, positive and treated for Missouri. So it's important to contribute data to larger data sets and to share data for a number of reasons. Data preservation happens through continued curation and sharing. If everybody just had their records on their own computer and their computer died, those records are gone. They may not be recoverable. You may lose decades of records, which impacts your own program. And that's bad. as you might expect. And this has happened, I had someone who moved into a new job and somehow acquired a data set. They shared that data set with us to enter into EDDMapS and said, I can answer no questions about this data because I know nothing about it. So that meant that the data set existed, but there wasn't any information around it. And that meant we also couldn't upload a lot of the records because the names of the subjects for things like invasive tunicates, I don't even know where to put that in a taxonomic hierarchy to make it make sense, because we don't have invasive tunicates as a concept. I don't know what possible tunicates it could be to even narrow that down. So when you share data, you're usually having to include information about that data set in some way. Either you're uploading metadata to a file sharing site, something like Data One, I think. I haven't looked at that in a while, so I don't know if that's changed at all over the years. But when you submit it to something like EDDMapS, or you contribute data to iNaturalist, or you're contributing data to USGS or GBIF or whoever else, you're bypassing the silos that happen within organizations. If you have a state forest next to a national park, next to a county wetland, none of them are talking to each other. They don't do it in a lot of cases. And so you don't necessarily know what's going on across those three properties that are literally right next to each other, which means you don't know what they have unless everybody's contributing data somewhere. So if they're contributing data to something like EDDMapS, then you can see, like with that boundary tool I showed you earlier. So if we go again to species locator and species distribution by other geographic locations, and we pick Florida again. I picked Florida because Florida has a lot of data. And we're gonna again pick the Everglades, because the Everglades also abuts other public lands. Oh, well, space would help. So if we click on that, we can see that, okay, there's also Bald Cypress National Preserve, there's Fakahatchee Strand. Those are all water conservation area. These might not talk to each other, but if they're contributing data to EDDMapS, they can see, okay, Everglades, their old world climbing fern is getting out of control. We don't have any yet that we know of, but we need to start surveying for it. So contributing to a larger data set like EDDMapS, like GBIF, so on and so forth, you can see who's dealing with what and where. And with something like EDDMapS I showed you earlier, we have the alert system, so you can also see, not just see when you go to the website, you can get emails potentially on a daily basis. I hope it's not a daily basis, because that means there's something really bad going on in your area. But you can potentially see on a daily basis what's being reported around you, so you can keep on top of things.
Thank you. There is a question out of curiosity: what database system is in use for EDDMapS?
So EDDMapS, we are using SQL Server, but we can output from SQL Server using mysterious programming language, output things as GIS compatible files. And then our data is also being fed to an ArcGIS Online account, I believe. There's also talk of us working with some other programs to have data overlaying some other large databases as well, but those would just be overlaying. It wouldn't be like where we're all downloading data from each other. So you could go and get the one master data set.
Thank you. And as Rebekah said, there is a lot here to cover, far too much for her to cover in even more than an hour. But that training there, the training tab up there on the menu bar, you can see all of the different training tools. And Rebekah, if you wanted to say something about this page again.
Yeah, so we do have our, like I said, EDDMapS Pro app walkthrough. We have our query tool walkthrough, I think down below here. Yeah, the EDDMapS projects. So I very, very briefly touched on projects. But we do have a walkthrough on how to use the EDDMapS project, how those work. So again, if you're running a reporting campaign, awareness campaign, grant project, something like that, that's one of the features you might really be interested in.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for presenting for us today. And many thanks to everyone who tuned in and are interested in documenting invasives and treating them and reporting on that action, because the more we know about where these plants are, the better we can manage for them. I'd like to invite everybody to tune in, register for our next webinar, which will be on June 5th on documenting insects and other invertebrates using photography. And our presenter will be Angela Morehouse, who's recently published a book called Flower Bugs. So do join us for that. And we have many hikes coming up. We have our Prairie Bio Blitz on June 1st and 2nd. You can find details on our website. And in the email that will be sent to you tomorrow, there's a survey. Please let us know what additional kinds of topics that you would like to learn about, and that will help us in planning our webinar masterclass series. Thank you very much, Rebekah. And also, we do have lots of resources at the moinvasives.org website as well. Thank you so much, Rebekah.
All right. So there was one quick question. Can users communicate with each other? Users cannot communicate with each other, but if you are part of a project, the project admins can send messages to people in their project, and the people in the project can send messages to the project admins. So that's the only kind of communication that happens between people in EDDMapS. Whereas with EDDMapS, there's also, if we go to the top right, there's a My Messages section, and these are emails you get from EDDMapS. So if you thought you missed an alert, or if you missed an email to download data from us, this is where you can look to see if maybe that message went to like your spam box or something.
Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good evening, and thanks again for presenting, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.